Welcome to the first event in our new series, Who Drives Electric Vehicles? This series is presented by the Environmental Center and generously sponsored by Pacific Power. In this series, we will interview different drivers of electric vehicles and share their experience of how their electric vehicle fits into their daily life. For this first interview, we are interviewing Amy Mitchell, and without further ado, here is the recording of that meeting. We've done a lot of these kind of flavor of events, and when it comes to electric vehicles, everybody lives a slightly different lives in this world in a slightly different way, and there's lots of different benefits and barriers that you might have individually, and we want to hear those so then we can hopefully address them and learn from real life drivers. General overview for the event today. What we did is, it's challenging during COVID, but we followed Amy around to try to give a little bit of me, and her partner Henry chose a Nissan Leaf back in 2016. Is it 2016 or 2015?
November 2015.
Okay.
So very end of 2015.
Great. So we're going to go ahead and start with that video. And as that's going along, make sure to think of those questions and comments. A little bit of a background on the series as a whole. We're really excited about electric vehicles, and electric vehicle drivers are very excited about the cars and the technology and the future of transportation. One of the challenges that we face in getting electric transportation more equally accessed across a broader swath of the population is that a lot of drivers just don't see themselves in an electric car as an EV driver. And some of those challenges are that a lot of the press around electric vehicles are related to one or two vehicles, and people don't necessarily see the EV drivers that are on the road and the electric vehicles that might be driving next to them on the highway or parking next to them at work. So with this series, our goal is to try to broaden people's understandings of who an electric vehicle can work for and how they fit into life in Central Oregon, but more broadly all over the country. So I want to quickly introduce Amy, and then we'll get over to the video. Amy's been driving an electric vehicle since November of 2015. She drives a used Nissan Leaf, and as you can tell, or maybe not tell from the video, you can tell that she likes bikes, but maybe not tell that she's in an apartment here in Bend. Welcome, and thanks for being a part of this, Amy.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for showing up, you guys.
I grew up on the Gulf Coast, Houston, Texas. We would go to the beach and you would have to bring kerosene. And the kerosene was to clean off the tar that you would accumulate when you swam in the ocean. You would come out and you would have patches of tar all over you, and you would use kerosene to clean off the tar. And that was my experience of going to the beach. In 2015, I first had the inclination to at least check out buying an electric vehicle. A friend of a friend made a documentary called The Great Invisible about the Deep Horizon oil spill. This documentary focused on the people that live on the Gulf of Mexico and make their living either fishing or in the oil industry, and both of those industries were devastated after Deep Horizon. It hit me so hard. When we walked out of the theater, I told my husband, I'm never buying gasoline ever again. I don't want to contribute to this industry. And he said, what about getting an all-electric car? And I said, well, you can't really do that though, right? I mean, how does that work? How do you take trips? How would we go visit friends in California? We're renters. don't you have to have a charging station at your house? And I would say it took us a year of exploring all those hesitations that people have. My name is Amy Mitchell. I live in Bend, Oregon. I've lived here since 2001, and I'm a teacher. I teach high school science in Redmond. And I lived briefly in Redmond, but for most of my time in Central Oregon, I have commuted between Bend and Redmond. I now own a 2013 all-electric Nissan Leaf that has about 60 miles of range, depending on temperatures and elevation. And I use it to commute to my job every single day. When it came time to decide whether owning an electric vehicle could be a reality, we did a lot of research on what cars are out there. And when you initially examine your electric vehicle choices, I think people are drawn to Teslas. I'm a teacher, my husband works at a bike shop. That wasn't gonna work. Was there an option that was affordable for us? When we started looking at used electric vehicles, they're very reasonable. Then we looked at the cost of charging an electric vehicle, and it was significantly less than, I was spending $200 to $250 a month on gas. To charge our electric vehicle was about $50 a month. The cost that we did not understand at the time that we were going to save is maintenance. There's no oil changes. There's just so few things that can go wrong that was a very unexpected savings for us that we had not calculated into our purchase, and has afforded us the ability to take more vacations and buy more Central Oregon toys. So it's been a win-win for us economically. From the time that we thought for the first time about getting an electric vehicle to the day that we bought an electric vehicle was almost exactly 1 year. Our regret is that we waited that year. And we get the question often, well, should I buy an electric vehicle now, or should I wait for a longer range vehicle to become available at a more affordable price? And my answer is, buy one today. Buy one right now, because yes, the technology will continue to get better, but what you use your car for on a day-to-day basis, an electric vehicle has everything that you need right now. If we could have saved those 12 months of me commuting 40 miles every single day in a gas-powered car, if I could have given one more year back to the earth, that sounds a little dramatic, but that's the way I think of it. I would have done it in a heartbeat. Had we known how easy it is to own an electric vehicle, I wish we had done it the day that the thought crossed our minds. So we encourage people who are EV curious to not wait and wonder what might be better around the corner. We have been renters much of our time living in Bend, and you have less control, less decision making as a renter. When we were considering an electric vehicle, we were pretty worried about how that would work as renters. When we found out that you do not have to install a charging station in your home, that alleviated most of that pressure from us as renters. Most apartments don't provide you with a garage. You're parking outside. How does that work? Do you run an extension cord from the building across a sidewalk to plug into your car? So we were pretty worried about becoming apartment dwellers and owning an electric vehicle. I'm really glad to say that the apartment that we're currently in The management was extremely willing to work with us. They had had previous requests from tenants or potential tenants about where an electric vehicle could be charged. They also expressed to us that they knew that they would get more such requests in the future. So we have felt very well supported. I don't know that it would work well in every apartment situation, just to be perfectly honest. But we spoke up and advocated for ourselves, and it was because others before us had spoken up and advocated that our landlords were willing to say, you know, you are not the first to ask. Maybe this is something we should consider. Usually when we travel, we as a society, we're focused on our destination. It was definitely an adjustment to get away from that mindset. We bought our Leaf in Portland at about 6 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, and had to get home to Bend that night over Mount Hood in the dark. It was November, and we were just giddy. That first adventure, taking it from Portland to Bend, not knowing exactly what the range was. What we have found since is that most of the trips we do can be done in our electric vehicle. We drive to Coos Bay, where my husband's family lives, in our electric vehicle. And the journey is more fun because every 60 miles, you're at a charging station that might be at a winery or a cute little market or a rest stop, and you're out walking, you're getting a snack, you're a more rested, alert driver, and it makes the journey more of an adventure rather than I just have to get to Portland. We've really had a good time exploring the limits, I guess I would say, of our electric vehicle and how many adventures we can have in this car. I would say that buying an electric vehicle was not the first of my environmental choices, far from it, but it also has certainly not been the last. There are choices out there that are possible for commuters, for apartment dwellers, for people who want to live more lightly on the earth. So I think just having conversations about our electric vehicle has really made an impact in that those around us, we have lots of friends who have now purchased electric vehicles. One of my best friends has our identical car. We're little twinsies. He's also a coworker, and at work we park next to each other, and the students notice that. So just as a conversation starter and getting people to think about what they might choose to do, to even be aware of those choices has been really satisfying for us.
I'm back.
Okay, great. So thanks so much for being a part of that video. I think it really helped capture kind of some of the hows and the whys of the transition that you made. Just to start things off, I just want to make sure that everybody knows for a Q&A to happen, people have to ask questions. So I can get things started, but go ahead and type any question you might have under the sun around electric vehicles and electric transportation, and Amy and myself will hopefully help answer those specific questions that you might be having. One of the questions that I had for you, Amy, is how, or when you were looking back in 2015, what was available to you then in terms of, you mentioned that the Tesla Model S was out of the picture for you, but what were you looking at then, and kind of how did you land on the car that you ended up with?
That's a great question. We looked around Central Oregon. There was this new car called a Chevy Bolt. That sounded pretty cool. We went to the Chevy dealer and they said, yeah, we're not doing that. You have to get special training and no one's going to buy those anyway. So that was kind of out. We went to the Nissan dealership and they were just in the infancy of, at least in Bend, this is just my Bend experience of selling the Nissan Leaf. So they knew a little bit, but not a lot. So we started to look in Portland. That seemed like that was going to be the place we would get more information, find more knowledgeable people. So we landed on a business called Platt Auto, and they only sell used electric vehicles. We communicated with them by phone, and they were able to answer lots of questions. And then when we went there, we kind of had picked out what we wanted, and they had sort of put one aside for us, but we were able to see electric Fiats, electric Volkswagens. They may have had an electric Mercedes, but I mean, it was very obvious just visually that the Nissan Leaf was kind of the king of that market. And price-wise, it was most certainly something that we felt we could afford. So we were directed toward our car primarily because we found a business that we trusted and we felt they were knowledgeable.
That's great. And I know that has changed somewhat, but a lot of folks, especially when they're interested in or curious about electric vehicles, might not think about the used market, and that we have great resources in the region to be able to look at kind of everything that's out there is really helpful. And there's more and more options with longer and longer ranges kind of every month. So.
And I see so many more electric vehicles around town now. So there's more people that you can ask. Almost every time I'm at a charging station in Central Oregon, somebody comes up and says, oh, what is that? How does that work? And so it starts a conversation. We also have ride and drives where you'll get 10 or 12 electric vehicles all in one spot, and people can just walk around and look at them and ask questions. There's more visibility than there was when we were first considering an electric vehicle, which is good.
Yeah. About a little bit more of the specifics of both how you were able to ask the rental company or property management company, and what type of charging you landed on in terms of charging at your apartment.
Absolutely. All that you need to charge an electric car, if you're able to charge it for, a good solid chunk of time, 8 hours at a time, is just a wall outlet, just a 110 wall outlet. And we had found that we were living in a duplex and it had a garage and we were plugging into the wall. So we knew that we could get away with plugging into the wall. We didn't have to ask for a special charger to be installed, which was great. The apartment building that we were really interested in, however, even though they have a beautiful underground parking garage, so we have protected parking, it's fabulous, but there were no outlets in the garage. And it just wouldn't have been feasible for us with me commuting every single day. I don't have workplace charging. That could make a huge difference in someone's life if you could charge at work where you are for 8 hours a day. I didn't have that option. So I needed to be able to plug in when I got home and charge overnight. So we just asked, hey, is there a possibility of installing an outlet, just a 110 outlet in this garage so that we could charge our electric car? And she didn't really even blink. The woman that was showing our apartment said, you're not the first person to ask that. What do you think about moving your assigned spot from this middle of the parking garage spot to this wall? And we could put an outlet on this wall. And we said, well, well, that would be great. Thank you. And they made it happen. So for us, it was easy. But like I said, people before us had asked. So it was nice that we had kind of a build up, kind of a build of momentum toward, hey, lots more people are driving EVs, and to attract those folks to your apartment complex, it would be so nice if you could offer this. And so when they put in our outlet, there's another wall in our parking garage, and they went ahead and put outlets on that wall as well. I assume in case they have future renters that have similar needs to ours. So we had a pretty easy time. I did mention in the video that it would be, on a case-by-case basis. It would be strange to run an extension cord across a sidewalk, for example. But with our situation, it just worked out perfectly.
And I think that's a really good point as well, that you weren't the first to ask. I've been doing a lot of work in trying to fill in some of the infrastructure gaps, both at workplaces and at popular public places in Central Oregon, like Mount Bachelor. And it's amazing how it doesn't take very many people asking for folks to realize, oh, there's a lot of people asking for this. Or for facilities folks and company management to not know if they have any staff members that either have electric vehicles or are considering an electric vehicle, and it would only work if they had workplace charging. So it is really important to make sure that you are communicating those things, because whether it works for you, if it doesn't work for you, then the next person that asks, they will have already gone so far down the path of thinking about it. They may have already reached out for more details. Okay, so we do have good questions coming in, and sorry that my audio wasn't on YouTube Live. I'm trying to juggle a lot. So another question, you are one of the more adventurous Nissan Leaf drivers and have gone on some fun road trips. What are some of the more fun charging stations you've been to visit, or are there certain routes that you've taken just because you like a certain stop?
Yeah, I have two things that come to mind. We head to Coos Bay quite frequently to go see my husband Henry's family, and there's different ways that you can get to Coos Bay, but on one of those routes there's a winery. It's called Brandborg Winery. Neither Henry nor I really drinks wine, but it's such a cute winery, and we've had such good times talking to the owners. I think we've bought a bottle of wine each time we've charged there, just because they just make it sound so fun. And it's a good hostess gift for Henry's aunt and uncle. So that's definitely one of the more fun spots that we found to charge. And then a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, for his birthday, which is in February, Henry wanted to do a complete Oregon coast trip in the electric car. So all the way from the Washington border to the California border. And on the coast, the charging stations are about every 25 miles. We don't have to charge every 25 miles, but we wanted to see every charging station. So we stopped at each and every charging station. And there's one in particular that's at like a community center on the coast that has community art displayed, and dance classes were going on. And it was such a fun spot to kind of get a feel for that particular coastal community. Some of them were at restaurants, some were at convenience stores, just the massive variety of charging stations never ceases to amaze me. And every time we go to a charging station, if we can, if there's somebody there, we say, hey, we stopped here because you have EV charging. Thank you for that. And then we try to, buy a little something, a snack. You're certainly not going to get skinny driving an electric vehicle, because every single time that we stop, we, eat a snack or try to buy something from the business to support them. So I've probably eaten less healthy, but it's just so much fun. It makes your road trips feel like such a treat. So that's what comes to mind with that question, Neil.
That's great. I think that you briefly touched on this, but you've now had the vehicle for coming up on 5 years or 4.5 years. What have you had to do in terms of maintenance, and how's that compared with the other cars that you've had in the past?
Great question. I mentioned in the video how shocked we were at the reduction in maintenance costs. It makes sense because there's no engine, you don't have oil to change or things like that. But that was not part of our thought process. So we've changed the things that you would in a usual car. We put really good snow tires on. It goes great in the snow, but just like any car, you have to have really good snow tires. We've changed the wiper blades. We've changed the air cabin filter. I think that's it. Henry, anything else? I don't think so. I don't think we've done anything to this car except the general maintenance that you would on any other car that doesn't involve an engine. So one of our previous vehicles was a 1993 Toyota that was a wonderful workhorse, but we spent $2,500 a year replacing bits of it, and so to save that money was just it was just an extra little bonus for us.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question about incentives. When you all bought your vehicle, were there any utility or state incentives or federal incentives for use?
We bought a used vehicle, so we didn't get like the tax credit that you can get because we bought used, but it was so significantly cheaper to buy used that made more sense for us. Heather? Sorry, I'm turning to Henry to ask. I don't think we had any incentives like that. One of the things that friends of mine have done, I have 2 other coworkers who have purchased new vehicles. One of those I know for sure did a lease. A lease is kind of a good thing to explore if you're considering an electric vehicle. I am not the best person to ask about that, but there will be really good deals on leases. And my understanding is that the dealership that you're leasing from kind of factors those federal credits and state credits into your deal. So it can end up being pretty affordable, a car with more range, more this, more that. But if you lease, then in a couple of years, you have the ability to then trade in, or trade up, I guess, for a longer range, more efficient vehicle. So something to look at for sure. But for us, the electric motorcycle that we have, which is not necessarily part of this conversation, that's my husband's toy, but that he purchased new, and he did get tax credits for that. So he could probably speak a little bit more to that, but they are out there for sure.
Awesome. We had a question come in from Facebook. How did you decide to go full electric versus a plug-in hybrid? And for anybody listening that doesn't know the distinction, typical hybrid is there's nothing and nothing ever plugs in. It just gets some efficiency from more efficiency from the motor by adding a small battery, so you can get some power from regenerative braking. So think like a Toyota Prius. A plug-in hybrid is something that you get a larger battery you can plug into a wall, so it can operate purely on electric for a longer period of time. But then after that runs like a traditional hybrid, like a Chevy Volt is a popular plug-in hybrid, although there's a lot more on the market now. And that was probably on the market when you all were interested in the Leaf. And then an all-electric would be something like the Nissan Leaf, where there's no, you're all on the battery, and they, yeah. So, did you all consider a plug-in hybrid, or why or why?
This was a very, I did not want to buy gas ever again in my life. Just a very gut reaction to this documentary for me. We took a year, so obviously we did do quite a bit of research, but I never considered buying something that wasn't all electric. For me, it was all or nothing. I didn't want to give any more money to gasoline, to oil companies. Obviously, that's not that's not emotional reaction. Since then, as we have looked at potential upgrades, we've looked at plug-in hybrids. It's really important for me, however, because I use my car primarily to get to Redmond and back, I need to be able to do that all electric. And we did not find a plug-in hybrid that offered that ability. 40 miles of electric range before gas kicked in did not appear to be available when we looked. So we have friends that have a plug-in hybrid, a Prius, that love it. That just wasn't the direction that I wanted to go because of what felt really important to me at the time.
Yeah, awesome. Another question kind of relating to those road trips that you have gone on. All of those, or a lot of that charging that you're talking about is the larger DC fast charging stations. Have you used any of the newer ones, like the one in Bend, and kind of how has that DC fast charging experience changed, or what's that all like for you?
Yeah, that was an absolute must for us when we purchased our Leaf. It was our only vehicle. I shouldn't say vehicle. There's always a fast charge option on our car. It's less expensive to have a car without a quick charger, and certainly there's an app because not all chargers are created equal. We can't charge the same places often that a Bolt charges or a Tesla. We've owned our Leaf is that there are just more and more and more. It's ironic that now we fought so hard to get a plug in our parking garage, and now next door to my building there's a whole bank of quick chargers that we could use at any time. So it has actually become less empty. We made a trip a couple of weeks ago to Fossil, Oregon, that we would never have been able to make. Madras has excellent fast charging. Fossil, Oregon has a quick charger now. When Mitchell puts in their quick charger, we'll be able to make much of our car with a canoe on it. We like to take our canoe up to the Cascade Lakes. Well, there's a quick charger at Mount Bachelor now. So we used to have to go up to Elk Lake, car into please for 6 hours while we're out on the water. Now that we have quick charging at Mount Bachelor, we can charge there and then head back down and not have to worry about running out of range. So the options have opened up all kinds of new adventures for us.
There's a lot of infrastructure of charge in the new charger in Bend. You can see how you're charging on an app. You can tap a touchless credit card to it and pay via that. And those chargers and a lot of the grants that are coming through are coming from. A lot of it is utility driven all over the state right now, and those ones are Pacific Power. Another Leaf has done in the winter compared to your previous car.
Yeah, that's a great question. That was something that we were certainly worried about. You can get an all-wheel drive Tesla. That we were given is it immediately got really good snow tires. Our parking garage, you may have seen in the video, has a very steep ramp. If maybe you live in Lapine or something like that. For us, that was the commute between Bend and Redmond an issue struggles. But it is not, and I've been real pleased with just the difference that I felt a good pair of snow tires made.
Drive car, and it is studless snow tires are amazing, and they totally changed the game. Next question is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. Somebody saw a picture of a canoe on your Leaf. How does the canoe affect the range of the Leaf heading out to the lakes?
That's an excellent question. Definitely lowers the range. We were able to drive all the way from Bend to Elk Lake, but it was pretty depleted by the time we got there. So the things that lessen the range, putting something on top, you also saw bicycles. Even a single mountain bike affects the range. So having something on top, you'll notice that, well, I don't know, maybe you didn't notice, we don't have permanent racks on our car. We use something called sea sucker racks, and it sounds terrifying, but it's awesome. They suction onto the roof of the car, and the reason we use those is because they're removable. So we never have racks on our car if we're not transporting something. Even just the racks, empty of anything else, can decrease range. So that is a consideration. And then cold decreases range primarily because you're trying to get warm and you're running the heater, and that will decrease range. And then elevation going uphill. So our trip to Portland, we have to charge completely, as close to 100% as possible at the Warm Springs Casino. Oh, see, there's another charging station option for you. Free beverages, coffee and soda at the Warm Springs Casino, thanks to them. Fill up 100% there to make it up to the next charging station is at Ski Bowl. So if it's a snowy, cold winter night and we're trying to get from Warm Springs up to Ski Bowl, it definitely is a challenge for our little car. However, I said in the video, I like testing the limits of that car. We've made it every single time. It does something when you get close to being out of range where it shows you a turtle, and it restricts you from going over about 25 miles an hour. So we have turtled on that particular stretch. But once you kind of figure out what the limits are, and it's kind of a game, then we can get up there without any issue at all. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's great to point out how much you all have been able to do with the infrastructure and the Leaf that you have, which is one of the shortest range all electric cars that are currently available. And just a little bit more range can really ease a lot of those challenges. Just the next version of the Leaf went from 24 kilowatt hours to 30, and then the next range beyond that. Each one makes those steps a little bit easier. So I remember the first time that we had conversations with the Bend EV Club with some of the folks with the newer electric cars that easily travel 250 miles. We were asking about charging stations in between here and Portland, and they looked at us like we were crazy. They're like, "Oh, to go to Portland, we just drive to Portland." Speaking of that, have you seen reduced range over the 5 years that you've had that older Leaf?
No, there are bars on the display that show you battery life, and 12 is a full battery. So this is a 2013 Leaf, and maybe last year we lost our first bar, so we're down to 11 bars out of 12 for a 7-year-old EV, and it did not, in my opinion, and I drive it a lot, it does not seem to have affected the range at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we've been really pleased with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are kind of running up towards the 12:45 that I was shooting for this talk, which has been super helpful and insightful. I want to let everyone know on the call that we will have a recording of this available afterwards. I saw a lot of people on the call that are current EV drivers or EV enthusiasts, and I think that these are the types of resources that are important to get in front of the general public for them to be able to see many of the different faces of EV drivers that are out there on the road. I want to thank the presenting sponsor of the event, Pacific Power, for being able to help us put this event together and modify from other more traditional events during challenging COVID times. And yeah, so a link to this event will be shared to anybody that registered on Eventbrite. We'll also publish that on the Facebook group and on our Environmental Center YouTube page. So then you can go ahead and share that or share a particular clip of that to anybody that I consider EV curious. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. I also want to thank Pacific Power again for helping us sponsor such a great event. And we look forward to doing more of these profiles in the future to continue to show more voices and faces of EV drivers in the Central Oregon community.